In this tutorial, we're going to look at an introduction to PHP. And specifically, we're going to be looking at how we can use it for repeating elements on a web page. So, to get us started, I have downloaded this PHP intro.zip file from our classwork site, from our website, and I have decompressed it, and I have thrown it into our Project 5 demo folder here. So we have all of these files to work with right here. Just gives us a basic page, our CSS, and one text file that has some code in it that we're going to use. Let's switch over to Dreamweaver. I'll show you what we have here. So here is the initial page that I've given you. It's this index file that I have in Project 5 demo. Pretty basic page. It's like the one that we've been working with kind of on an ongoing basis. So we have the header at the top and the footer at the bottom. We've got two columns and some navigation. And I'm going to come up here and click on split so that we can see the code as well. In fact, we're going to do a lot of code work today. And you will notice that as I switch to split, that I actually have a fluid layout working here because you see how narrow my page is. So pretty basic page, but with the fluid layout now. So I have that there. I have the index file open. I've also opened this code file over here, and you can see that it just has snippets of code in it. This ends in .txt because it is not a code file unto itself. It just has code in it. But I've opened it in Dreamweaver because I'm going to be copying pieces out of that. So these are the pieces we're working with here. The other file that I have to work with is I have this PDF file, and this walks us through our process today. So these are the slides that we use in class, and because it has the process, I'm going to flip back and forth between the slides and Dreamweaver where we're actually doing the work. So we're just going to sit and flip back and forth as we go through it. So to start off here in the slides, here's our introduction to PHP. So basically, PHP is one of the programming languages that can be running on our web server. So up to this point in the class, we've been building static pages, meaning they're just text files that have HTML code in them, and they sit out on a web server somewhere on the internet. So when the client or the end user goes to their browser, types a web address, it goes and it finds the server, it grabs that text file, and it comes back, and it is the browser's job to interpret that code. It grabs the other files as needed, but that's the basic process. Now we're starting to look at dynamic pages. And so for dynamic pages, you have to have some software running on the web server, and it basically builds the pages on the fly. So any page that you go request, it doesn't exist right now. You request it, and it grabs the various pieces and builds the page. Okay, so PHP is one of those languages. So I have a little graphic here to illustrate. So you see my client or my end user here, and so when they request a page, it comes down to the web server, which with static pages, it just grabs it and goes back. In this case, it has to run out here through PHP, and it gathers some information either from a file system, meaning like a folder of files, a database, which is very common, or it could even go to like a mail server and grab some information there. But it grabs that information, runs back through PHP, and it basically uses a template to build the page. So coming back through the web server, it builds the page and sends it back out to your end user. So that's how that is working. One of the easy ways of thinking about this is if we think about Amazon, obviously a very large website out there. If I was to go shopping for a book, say an Italian cookbook, and I search for that, there is not a page on the web server already in existence listing Italian cookbooks. It instead runs and it queries the database, and it says that it's looking for books, they are cookbooks, and they are on Italian food. That narrows the search down. It sends that information back into a template and then sends that page to me. So that's an easy way, or a good example, of how some of that works. The other thing I need to give you here is the definition for PHP. So if you look at the bottom of the slide down here, PHP, interestingly enough, the definition for PHP is PHP Hypertext Preprocessor. That's a very strange definition because we're defining PHP and PHP is in the definition. That's because it was not the original definition of PHP, but that is the current. It used to be a little bit different technology, and so they had to kind of rename it, and this is what they came up with. So anyway, that's what that is. So let's flip to our next slide. I'm going to show you what we're working on today, or what we're going to be doing with PHP. First, this is a similar process. We've been doing this since early in the semester. So you see that I have an HTML file here. And you remember that when we initially did styling, we embedded that CSS code or that styling right there within the page. Okay? And that was the first way we learned to do it. But we quickly learned that was not the ideal. That was not how we wanted to approach it. And so what we did was we created an external CSS file, and we put our styling out in that CSS file, and we had a connection between the two. So that as the browser loaded this HTML file, it reached a link that pointed to that CSS file. It would load our styles and then continue to go through the HTML file. Of course, the advantage to this is we can now share the CSS file with multiple HTML files. So we have a central location for our styling. It helps us build consistency in our pages. It also gives us just one location in this external CSS file to make changes that will affect all of our pages. So that is shared CSS in an external file. We're going to do something similar today using PHP, except in this case, we're going to share page content. Okay, so instead of styling, we're looking at content, and what we're looking at is content that is common across our pages. So if you stop and think about what is common across our pages, probably the first things that come to mind are our navigation up at the top, because usually that's just consistent from page to page. Another obvious one is the text that is in the footer at the bottom. That is usually consistent from page to page. And in fact, those are the two examples we're going to use in our tutorial today. So in this case, you see that I have an HTML file right here, and I have content sitting on the page. Okay, and the content, of course, is part of the HTML. I'm going to create an external PHP file, and it's going to be PHP because I need the language to run to do this. And I'm going to take this content and move it into this external file. And then that way, when I have multiple HTML files, I can have them draw, each of them draw on this content as they build the page. So again, it gives me consistency in content across my pages, and it gives me one central location that I can make a change to some content and it'll display across all of my pages. So that's our goal that we are going for today. Okay, so here in the PDF, and you might be following along in the PDF, and hopefully you have these sample files open as well. I'm going to flip to our next slide, and this is going to just walk us through our process now. So I need to have the slide open here and Dreamweaver open here, and this is my page that I have. So starting with my slides. Up here at the top, this will reference what file we're working in. So this is all HTML files. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the .html file extensions to .php. And what this does is with a .php extension on the file, it will allow the server to run PHP code in that file. Okay, so there's still going to be HTML files that we will put some PHP code in, but without changing the file extension, most servers would not let it execute that PHP code. Okay, so what I need to do is I need to flip back over to Dreamweaver. I only have one page, one HTML file, the index. I want to go close this file because renaming it with it open confuses matters. Okay, so I'm going to come up here, click on the little X, and close that file. My code file is open, that's fine. I'm going to come over here to my Files panel. There's my file name. I'm going to click on it, and then I'm just going to come here to the end and change that .html to .php. and click return. And you notice that when I do, it asks me about fixing other files. Now this one is a little bit confused because I changed some of this code. So this is where the cache usually works pretty well in Dreamweaver, but I'm going to go ahead and say update because that is the best thing for me to do. And you'll see right here, see index.php, that's the file it's updated. So I'm going to say update. Now, it told me it couldn't update these files. I deleted these files. It's not kept up with it, but that's okay. I'm going to say OK. So now I'm going to go back and open my index.php file. And actually, here's my navigation. And this is what it fixed right here. This used to say index.html because that was the file it pointed to. So when I rename my file to .php, obviously it needs to fix the link as well, so it links to the .php. The place it was confused is these down here used to be linked to About Us, Products, and Contact Us.html. I just recently deleted it, so that's okay. Okay, so that is my first step, is I need to rename that file to .php. Okay, back to my slides. Okay, my next step is I need to create this external PHP file. Okay, so here's my HTML file that I'm working in right now. I have two pieces of content in here that I'm going to move in a minute, but I have to have this external file, and I'm going to name it include.php because the PHP command we're going to be using here is include. So back over to Dreamweaver, I just need to create a file. I'm going to go up to File and say New. We usually create HTML files here. We can create CSS files here, though we usually don't go about it this way. And I can slide right down here and click on PHP. Okay, so I'm going to select PHP and then just come over here and click Create. The doc type actually does not matter. It's going to put some HTML in and I'm going to delete it. So don't worry about the doc type. So I'm going to click on Create. And now I just have an untitled file. So first thing I should always do is save it. So I'm going to do a Command S. There we go. And I am going to name it include.php. Now it took me to my root folder. That is handy. I'm going to go into Assignments. I am working in Project 5 Demo. Okay, so you can see the files I'm working with right there. So locate Project 5 Demo, and I'm going to save my include.php file there. And as I noted a moment ago, it gave me some basic HTML code, which I don't need. So I'm going to select that and delete, and then I might as well go do a save again. So really all I needed was an empty file named include.php. Okay, back to my slides. Okay, now notice at the top up here I'm working in include.php. And what I need to do is I need to put my base PHP code in place. Okay, so I have a sample of the code right here, and we're going to go pull this from the code file in a moment. So this is the sample code that we're going to be using right there. Let's look at what this is though before we copy it. So first of all, if you look at this code, you see that it starts with a bracket question mark and it ends in a question bracket. And that denotes PHP code to the server. So it looks a little bit similar to our HTML code, but different. And anytime the server sees that, it knows that it's receiving PHP code and it's going to try and execute that. Now within those, I'm doing a couple different things. Actually, I'm doing one thing twice, and I'm declaring two variables. Now variables are just memory locations that I can store things in. Okay, so see this first bit of code right here, $nav creates a variable called nav, so I can store something in it. Then I get an equal, double quote, then I get another double quote and a semicolon down here. So whatever I put in the middle here between the double quotes is the content that I'm going to put into my nav variable. Okay, so that creates my first one. I'll flip to my next slide and you see the other thing I'm doing is I'm creating a second one called footer. So if I look at my graphics over here in my PHP, my include.php file, I'm creating a nav and a footer variable over here. And that's where I'm going to store my content or my HTML code. Now, before I go do that, I do want to note that in the assignment that I'm giving you today, in the assignment you are asked to create 3 variables and basically do this, with 3 different pieces of code or 3 different pieces of content. I'm only doing 2 right now, so make sure you watch out for that when you do the assignment. Okay, so back over to Dreamweaver. Let's see, my include.php, I can just go to code. There's never going to be a preview on this, so I went to my code button up here. I'm going to go to my include php code.txt file, and you'll notice right up here at the top I have said include.php base code. Okay, so there's my base code right there. And so I'm just going to select lines 4 through 18, or basically the bracket question mark tag down to the question bracket. That's the code that I want, and I'm going to do a Command C to copy that. Then I'm going to go back to my include.php file and just paste it there. Okay, so that's my base code. Now, for our example, we're only doing 2. We're going to do the nav and we're going to do the footer. So when you do your assignment later, you need all 3 of these. Because I'm only doing 2, I'm going to delete this up here, but you won't need to do that on your assignment. So I'm doing 2 right now. By the way, in PHP code, the 2 slashes are a comment, so anything after that is ignored. So that's why I have that called out that way. Okay, so I have my base code there. I'm going to go do a save real quick. Back to my slides. Now, my next step, let's look at the graphic here. Here's my HTML file I'm working in. I'm going to go find my first piece of content, and I'm going to copy it and put it over into the nav variable. My first piece of content is my navigation code. So I'm going to take that and copy it and put it into the PHP file so that it's stored in that variable. So you can tell here it is the unordered list. Okay, so let's flip back over here. Let's go to my index page. Now you might want to click on, oops, it's selecting everything. Might want to click in your navigation. Well, this isn't cooperating. Anyway, I can easily find my navigation right here. There's my nav tag. And this is the code I want right here, the unordered list. Now, you can put anything you want in the variable. I prefer to leave divs and other structural elements behind in my HTML file because that's my structure. So I just want the content itself. So the unordered list is the actual content. So I'm going to select that unordered list. I'm going to leave a copy here behind just so I know where it is. I'm going to do a Command C and copy it. And now let's go back to my include PHP file. This is going into my nav variable. So there's my nav variable. So I'm just going to take this comment right here. Let's just delete that and let's do a Command V. Let's paste my content in there. And I'm going to hit a tab there, make that align a little bit better. Okay, so now I have my content in for my nav variable. If I flip back to my slides, you're probably guessing what my next step is. And I want to get the second piece of content for my HTML file and copy it over into the variable in the PHP file. So that's my footer. So again, back to my index page. I can easily find there's my footer down here. And again, I want to leave the footer tag behind. I'm just going to select the paragraph that is in it. So select the open P tag to the close P tag. Let's copy that. Let's go back to my include.php file. I can look right down here. There's my footer variable. Again, I'm going to select this comment. I can delete it, or I can actually just paste right on top of it. Okay, so that put my paragraph in right here into my footer variable. And I'm going to go up and do a save. Okay, so at this point we're almost done with our include.php file. we have, here let's zoom back in a little bit, we have created two variables and we've put some content into them. Now you may notice over here, you see some of our numbers are red, and that is indicating that I have some errors in my code. Now I could hover over it. I have a syntax error, unexpected identifier. So let's look at what we have here. I have my nav variable, and we know what is going in the nav variable is what is between my double quotes. Okay? So I've declared the variable. There's my double quote. It starts here. And as you go through the content, you'll find that it hits that double quote right there. And now it has a problem. Okay. So when it found a double quote, it thought that was the end of my content. And it expected a semicolon to be after it. See, like we have here in the code. There's no semicolon there. It knows we have an error. So that's my problem. The problem is my content. See, here's my content right here. It has double quotes in it, and my PHP is using the double quote as part of its syntax. Okay, so that's causing a problem for me. It's throwing things off down here as well, even though there are no double quotes there. So that's the problem that I have right now. Now, there are two ways I can go about fixing that. Here's our slide. So shows, sorry, I got ahead of myself. This shows the error. Okay, so the double quotes. So that's the error. One way I can go about fixing it is I can go find the double quotes that are in my content, and I can put a backslash in front of them. So that basically tells the PHP when you find the backslash, the next character is still part of my content. Okay, so that's one approach I can go. So I would take all the double quotes in my content, put a backslash in front of them. The other approach to it is I can go into my content, and I can find all the double quotes, and I can replace them with single quotes or apostrophes. And that's kind of my preference, so I think I'm going to take this approach right here. So back over in Dreamweaver, I need to take all these double quotes on my content, switch them to single quotes. Now you can go do that by hand. There is a little bit faster way to do it though, and I want to show you that. So I'm going to come select the actual content. Okay, so open UL to close UL tags, because that's the area I want to make changes in. And Dreamweaver has a find replace command that I don't believe we've used yet this semester. So I'm going to do a Command F, and this is my find down here. And let me zoom in a little bit. Find this little caret character and click on it, and it opens it up further. So under find, I'm going to put a double quote right there. And under replace, I'm going to put a single quote. So in the selected area, I wanted to find all the double quotes and replace them with single quotes. So once I put those in place, I can come down here to the other side and I can click on the replace all button. And then up here, when I look at it, you see that all of my double quotes here became single quotes. And then if I look over on the left-hand side here, all of my errors are gone. So that took care of my errors. Okay, so I'm going to save that. Command S to save just this file. And this takes up a lot of space. I'm going to grab my properties panel and drag it up here like that. Give myself some more space back. Okay. Actually, here I can come over here and close the find. Okay, so my include.php file is actually done at this point. It has created two variables, and it has put content into them. So let's flip back to our slides and go to the next slide. Our next step, you'll see, is in my index.php file. And I need to add this line of code right here, obviously in the code, and I want to put it on the very first line of code. So what this does, include.php, this tells the browser to access my include.php file as it loads my index. So if you look at the graphic over here, basically it creates this connection right here, the thing that I've highlighted in yellow. It creates that connection to the file. So I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. I'm going to go to my code file, because again I have samples of code, and here's my include right here. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to copy that. Let's go to my index page. In code, I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to the very top I'm going to hit return and paste that at the beginning. And I might as well do a save. I haven't saved this file in a while. Okay, so as this page loads, the first thing it comes across is that include command. It will run out, load, well, find my include.php file, actually execute the code that's in it, create the two variables, load the content into those two variables. Okay, next slide. So now I'm going to go back to my index.php file. What I need to do is I need to find this code that I copied out. So this is my navigation code, and I need to replace it with this command right here. This command is echo nav, or echo $nav. It basically tells it, go find that nav variable that you put content in, take the content and echo it or display it here, which means it puts that HTML back in the file so that it can then display it in your browser. Okay, so let's go do that real quick. I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. Here's my unordered list right here, but I need that echo command. So let's go to my code. Down here at the bottom, you'll see that I have the echoes. I gave you all three again, and I'm using the nav right now. So I'm going to take this one and copy it. By the way, it is possible to copy code out of the PDF file, but it's better to copy it out of a code file like this because the characters can be a little bit different in the PDF. The PDF was created through InDesign, and so the character that sometimes causes problems is the quotes right here. If they're typographer quotes or curly quotes, they won't work because these are actually inch marks is what these are. Okay, back to where we were. I need this echo nav. I'm going to copy it back to my index page, and that's replacing, it's the navigation, so it replaces my UL. So I'm going to select that and paste, and it puts that echo command in there. Back to my slides real quick. You can probably guess what my next step is. Yes, I'm going to go find the paragraph for my footer in my index page, and I'm going to replace it with an echo footer. This tells it to display the content of the footer variable. So back to Dreamweaver, I'm going to go to my code file, come get my echo footer, copy that, go to my index. This is down here at the bottom, and I'm going to take this paragraph and paste the echo command in there. Now, a couple of things. One, once you put this in place, when I click over here in my preview, you notice that I cannot see my navigation anymore. I cannot see the text in my footer anymore. And that's because Dreamweaver is not executing that PHP code. Therefore, it's not displaying that. It just shows me that there's some PHP code there. So, an important thing when you go work on your project, I would work through the design of a page first, okay, which is how we typically work on it. Create your page, put your structure in place, put your content in, style it, create your page structure, get all of that in good shape before you convert it over to PHP. Because once you start to put PHP in place, things start to disappear. And it would be very difficult now. Like for instance, it would be really hard for me to go style my navigation links because I can't see them. So make sure you take care of all of that first before you start doing this PHP portion. Okay, I have that done. I'm going to go up and do a save. Let's flip back to my slides. I think I have one last slide. Yes, just a summary. So I have now, let's zoom in on this a little bit. I've now taken my HTML file. I renamed it to index.php. Okay. I created my include.php file. In that, I put the code to create the nav and the footer variables. Then I took the content of nav and I put it over here. I took the content for footer. I put it over here in the footer variable. And then I replaced the actual content with echo commands. Okay, so that's the process we've gone through. And basically I'm done with this one page. But I only have a one-page website right now. I need a multiple-page website. I have 4 pages in my navigation. So what I would do at this point is I would take my index file, and as we usually do when we create a web page, I would duplicate this. Okay, so make a copy of it. So if I make a copy of it and I rename it about.php, then it has all of these changes in it, and it's already tied to this PHP file. Okay, so you see the parallel to what we've done with CSS in the past. So let's go do that real quick. I'm going to go back over to Dreamweaver. Let's see, I did a save already, I believe. Let's do a save all just to be sure. And you can see right over here, all I have right now is the index.php file. I need 4 pages. So I am going to right click on that, go up to edit, and do a duplicate. It gives me an index copy. If I single click on this, I can then rename it, and I know one of them is called about, so I'm just going to name it about. I'm actually going to go pull up, I'm going to switch to my include.php file because right here this tells me my page names, so just want to make sure that I remember the right ones. Okay, I need 2 more, so back to my index, right click, edit, duplicate, which is a command D. Select that file, single click on it. Make sure you don't double click because that would open it and confuse matters. And I'm going to name this one products. And one last page. Select it, single click, and this one is contact. I'm just going to name it contact. Keep it simple. So I have index, about, products, contact. Okay. Now this is important that I remember these names because I need to fix my links right here, right? Okay, see I have the dummy links right now. So let's go and fix this while I'm here. I might as well. So right here where about is, I'm going to delete that pound sign and I'm going to type about.php. I am doing this by hand, but we've done a lot of code in this one, so make sure you don't typo it. Under products, I delete the pound sign and I type products.php. And then the last one, my contact us page, delete the pound sign and type contact.php. Make sure you put the .php on all of them. Okay, so those names are all good. I'm going to do a save. Okay, I'm almost done. The only other thing I want to do here is I'm going to go select about, hold my shift key and click on contact. I want all 3 of these. I'm going to double click to open all of them. And I am just going to, let's go to split view. So this is my contact page. I'm going to change my headline so I can tell what page I'm on. Actually, I should change my headline. And down here, my title, I might as well fix that. Okay, so there's my contact page, my products, fix my headline, fix my title, save it. About, my last page, change that to about, go into my title, change that to about, and save. Okay, I now have a 4-page website. There are 4 PHP files for my pages. Because I did my PHP work first and then duplicated them, see I've got the echo and all of them up at the top. I have the include and all of them, so that's good. I have my include.php file. It has 2 variables in there. This is that code file. I can close that. I don't need it at this point. Oops, I closed the wrong file. That's okay. Get that guy out of the way. So at this point, I'm done with all of my work right here. I might as well upload it and go check it. So I'm going to go to my Project 5 demo folder where we're working right here. Come up here and click on the up arrow to upload. And wait for it to upload my files. That was relatively quick. I'm going to go over to my browser and I need to go pull up my page. Now, my page is actually not in this list. You might remember it. I'm just going to do it the easy way. I'm going to click on one of these and then go to the address right here and change it to my username. You all are in the list. Okay, there's mine. And then we were working in Project 5 Demo, so I'm going to go to Project 5 and click on Class Demo, and it loads a page. Now here's my home page. Now the question for you would be, how can you tell if this is working or not? And the way that you can tell it's working is that my navigation and my text and my footer display. Okay? If the PHP wasn't working, those would just be blank. There wouldn't be anything in those locations because all that was there was an echo command. Okay? I could also flip through my pages. So there, see this changed to about, products, contact. Okay, so I see it's working on all of my pages. Okay, so everything is working here. And two last things I want to show you. One, on this page, I'm back on my home page. I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to View Page Source. And I want to point out to you in source code that the PHP is gone. So notice the include command is no longer up here. If I come down to my navigation, the echo command is not here. And if I go to my footer, the echo command is not there. And that's because the PHP code executes. It runs that and it does what it's supposed to do. So it did the include. The command no longer shows here. It echoed the code here, and therefore by putting it there, the echo command goes away. Okay, so that's no longer necessary. It doesn't show it anymore. Okay, now the last thing I want to point out to you is just to make sure we understand why we've done this. Okay, because sometimes partway through this, I have students go, this is a little confusing because I had my content here, I moved it over here and set it up so that when it loads, all it does is it move it back again. Okay, so it seems like I'm just moving things around. So I want to point out again that the purpose of this is to centralize this content in this one central location. Put it right there in a common spot so that as the page loads, it grabs it and displays it here. Now, the advantage is I have the consistency between my HTML pages, okay, because it's one set of code. And then the other advantage is if I want to make an edit to my code, I only edit it in the PHP file. So let's actually go do that right now. I'm going to go back to Dreamweaver. Any change that I want to make in those variables, I am just going to go to my include.php file here. Okay, there's my code. You may have noticed that my copyright year was wrong. This is now 2020 that I'm recording this. And so I'm going to take that 19 and change it to 20. I'm going to do a save. Let's go back to the browser real quick and just point out, yes, see, we do have 19. And if I flip through my pages, they all say 2019. So back to Dreamweaver. I've updated it to 2020. I'm going to go take that include.php file here and upload that to the server. Now back to my browser. And now if I go refresh a page, in fact, let's switch to my home page, and you see it now says 2020. And if I go to About, it says 2020. So all of these, as the page loads, it runs to the server, it grabs that content out of that file, and displays it here. So I only had to change it in one location. So hopefully this is pretty clear now, and you see how we can use PHP in this case just to store these common web elements in a central location and then display them across all of my pages in this fashion.